been a while since I've done a fight review, and my current favorite channel for experimenting with different weapons and styles, Weaponism, released a pretty interesting video. The swords from Demon Slayer, the ninja dude from the last arc that came out. I'm so bad at names, but as a Demon Slayer fan and a practicing historical swordsman, I thought this would be a really fun video to dissect. So the thing that I think I want to point out first is there's a misconception that dual wielding wasn't a very common practice or effective practice. In fact, we have several treatises, particularly in the Renaissance and in Baroque, that cover wielding weapons in both hands, particularly rapiers, side swords, as well as parrying daggers. So, in the context of a duel, maybe you're outnumbered by one or two people. Fighting with a weapon in each hand is actually pretty effective if you know what you're doing, and there's some pretty big, they're overlapping principles that I'm sure we're going to find in this video, and that is using one of the weapons to gain control of the enemy weapon, either through binding, in the German style, gaining the blade in the Italian style, or doing the weird thing the Spanish do with destreza, which is kind of binding, but not really, but yeah, it is. Yeah, so let's get into this more. So this is a standard stance that you're going to see overlap in a lot of traditions. Is the weapon that you want to use for binding and controlling the weapon is going to be held more out and lower, and the weapon that you want to use for striking is going to be held up higher, and that's mostly to protect your hand and make it harder for your opponent to predict the trajectory of either the cut or the thrust. So as you saw with the lower hand, binded and gained control of the weapon. Though I am interested in understanding the thinking of pairing with the flat, when I would try and play up this hole and see if this design has practical merit to it. But yep, that's a standard play, and it's very effective, especially if you do not have a shield or you're two-handing. And we'll talk about things that the Kendoka can do to overcome this threat. Another thing, though, that I like to point out is I'm not convinced on the efficacy of the chain. It can tangle things. It can get in the way. Though I'm not good. What's the good word for this? Not particularly qualified in speaking on East Asian martial arts, because I've only dabbled slightly in karate, and I believe I made it to blue belt, and then I've also dabbled with katana. So if anyone knows or has any ideas how the chain can be used, I would be more than welcome to hear it. Now, they're probably parrying with the flat to preserve the integrity of the weapon and decrease the likelihood of it breaking, because that's what you want to do with a normal katana. They can't effectively parry edge on without damaging the blade itself. But yeah, you can easily alternate between both swords doing different jobs. So this right here's this is also an effective stance. In the German tradition, holding the blade up like this, I believe, is ox. And that's how you get the famous German windmill of death or helicopter of death. The only difference is the blade is the edge should be facing the camera. If it were the German tradition. And then I believe in Fiore this is the window. But you can easily thrust from this position, do lateral cuts, horizontal cuts, and vertical cuts, and it's hard for the opponent to predict which one you're going to go for. Though I would have the other weapon. You always want to have both weapons threatening the opponent, because if they mess up, then you can exploit that with a thrust. Alright, that was pretty fast. I'd like to see what went down there. Alright, so they're going offensive. Huh. Alright, so so he's moving in. I'm not sure what his plan is. Because he could have taken the left hand and bound up. So cutting from their bottom right up towards their top left shoulder to bind, and then thrust with the hand that's already up. So I'm not quite sure the thinking there, but it works. He gets the point, and that's just, you know, goes to just how versatile dual wielding is. So one thing, and I know, you know, this is contrary to what you're trained to do with the kendo, but you really don't want to be at a long guard point forward, because that's just exposing your weapon to be bound. And you see how there are gaps in between the sword that you can exploit. Okay, so they were doing a really good job of this so far, but you never want to cross swords. Yeah, that's why. Another thing you can do if you see someone cross swords is just bind over both swords and then hit them with the false edge. Not sure about that stance, because there's a range advantage You could probably go for the thrust into the face. That was not really a double. Anime Man won that one. So thrusting is gonna be your friend here. Don't know why they attacked the sword. So it doesn't seem like... See, I'm also... It's hard to gauge how good the sword catching parts are because the Kendokai isn't using something that has the profile of a blade. It's a round stick. So it's gonna be a lot easier to catch a real sword in that than the Shinai. Alright, so as soon as they lowered their weapons, that's a thrust right there. Yep, as the thrusting is gonna be the Kendokai's best. He just did a little cavazione there. Nice. Okay, yeah, good footwork. You're not gonna outbind them, and you're not gonna out control their weapon. So you gotta rely primarily on footwork. And you need to be a lot more aggressive as well. Kendoka could have won that if they turned that into a draw cut. And I'm assuming that this fight is unarmored, or else a draw cut wouldn't be as effective. Oh, I didn't go back far enough. All right, so they didn't thrust in far enough. Oh no, that landed with force. That's a double. Ooh. Well, it still looks like it's usable. For now. But yeah, it's probably no longer safe to practice with. I'm honestly surprised that it came apart at the tip. I was expecting it, if it were to come apart, where the towards the guard where it's really thin, but yeah, all in all, this is great video. I just want to talk about what the Kendoka can do, or more what I would do. So most of the effective hits with the two-handed weapon were in the thrust. And as you see, the dual wielder, it tends to angle their guards so that there's huge openings. So I'd probably be in Fiore's boar's tooth. So the blade and body is situated at a certain degree in which you can attack from angles and thrust in, while also leaving you to be giving you enough breathing room to adapt the stance and parry into it. One thing I want to talk about with the design of the weapon. Aesthetically, it's perfect. It's a beautiful looking weapon. The artist knows what they're doing. My only concern is the structural integrity of this weapon is compromised, especially at the hilt right here. And I'm assuming that this little circular cutout is designed for catching blades. I don't think that's the most effective design for that. And later I've made some mock-ups of potential alternatives for this type of weapon. Yeah, so this is the quick little mock-ups that I did. As potential alternatives for the design of the weapon that I think would be slightly more effective. The first one is based off of the European it's a parrying dagger with grooves built into the false edge of the blade that's meant to catch swords in the offhand, so that you are basically free to kill them without much struggle. The reason I think it's more effective to use on the back edge is you're preserving the quality of the edge of the blade, so you're minimizing things like rolling or cracking that can reduce the capacity for a good cut. Also, the way the grooves are shaped act as almost kind of like hooks to keep the sword in place, and it does not take a huge chunk of the metal out of the sword, because usually when that happens, the entire geometry of the blade becomes compromised. And if enough force is applied to these weak areas, the sword can fail altogether. So when designing a weapon, you definitely want to take into account not just its killing potential, but whether it can last in a battle or a duel. The other one that I designed, I looked up some pictures of the Yari, because I wanted to keep it limited to what they would use in Japan. Though they had Yari with hooks and such that are very reminiscent of Western European polearms in the 15th, 16th century, with their hooks and their little... You know what I mean. Okay, so for the second one, it's got I think a little bit more potential for a ninja type character, because the hooks not only act as a defensive measure but offense. So if you were to parry with the true edge, you could then immediately almost kind of like a war pick strike this hook with a false edge cut, and it'll pierce through. Especially if you get it in the head, that's a kill right there. And you can also catch weapons on it. And then the other little hook I thought would be pretty effective, because it almost serves as both a something to catch other weapons on, and as a kind of cross guard to keep your hand safer. And I mean, you could probably punch with your hand and jab that in someone as well. But if you guys have seen any major flaws that I've overlooked in these designs, or have other ideas you'd like to see me implement, feel free to comment. I want to create a community where we can all have open discussions and, you know, nerd the hell out, have some fun. So yeah, this is the kind of stuff that I like to do with Chase when we get more, well, when I get more money, and can afford to spend on some extra things, is playing around with fantasy weapons and essentially coming up with fictional systems of combat based on the universe. Right now we are working on doing a formalized system for the Hero Shade. So that's gonna come out. It's probably gonna take a while. This is a lot of work, but you know, I've rambled on long enough.